Let's talk a little more about the concept of working on the geometry of your business. It's very powerful and yet very simple, and the most delightful aspect of it is that not 1 in 100 of the people you compete in understand it, recognize it, think about it, act upon it. Simply stated, most people in business try to grow and sustain their enterprise by dealing with it in a linear, in an incremental, in a very traditional sense. They try to grow 10% a year. They try to basically make things work a little bit better. When you work on the geometry of your business, you try to get many different activities or elements all to improve their performance at the same time and combine together to compound benefit. It's like money compounding tax-free. When money basically has to be paid taxes on, it doesn't grow anywhere close to the way money that's tax either free or tax protected, tax deferred in a pension or profit sharing account, for example, grows and compounds and grows and compounds and grows and compounds. Well, the same concept of geometric compound protected growth is what we're going to work on in your business. It's bringing not one activity to bear, but bringing a dozen different activities at the same time, all to perform better in a combined way that they, number one, produce geometric growth. And I'll get into the example of that very shortly so it'll come alive. Number two, so they're all working together to overlap, to envelop, and to bring the maximum impact possible from every single effort imaginable. You're hitting people from many different factors at the same time. The military has a great phrase for it. In war, in battle, they call it force multiplier effect. F-O-R-C-E, multiplier, M-U-L-T-I-P-L-I-E-R, effect. And it's bringing lots of different activities to bear at the same time and hitting people from many different fronts, hitting them in the front door, the back door, from the frontal attack, the surprise attack, from the air, from the land, from the sea, at night, during the day, in groups, hand to hand, with pre-launch missiles. And it's hitting them from so many activities combined that it impacts in a combined geometric effect to decimate, to render ineffectual, and to dominate the enemy. And if you can think about it in a little bit of a militaristic sense, your goal is to outthink, outmarket, out-impact, and literally to outperform your competition from not just one point. Being a better salesperson or selling organization than your competitor is certainly impressive, but all that's going to give you is 10 or 20% increase. If you're selling better, if you're bringing customers in better, if you're converting them better, if you're maximizing them better, if you're keeping them longer, if you're getting them to buy more things more often, refer more people, all at the same time combined, and you're getting 10% better here, 20% better here, the combined effect becomes geometric. It's no longer linear. It's no longer 10 or 15%. It starts increasing and growing in multiples of hundreds or thousands of percent. And it's the way I have been able to pilot personal clients I have advised to growth levels in the 10 and 20 and hundreds of times greater. And everyone says, how can you do that? How can one company perform 100 times or 1,000 times better than another when most of them don't have any great buying advantage, when most of them don't have a lot more capital, when most of them don't have even more people? It's because we, you and I together from today forward, are going to outthink and out-strategize and out-geometrically perform everyone else we go up against, because we're going to use the power of geometry. We're going to basically make exponential growth the way of thinking in every activity we do and every decision we make. Let me make the concept of thinking outside the box, of engineering breakthroughs, of developing funnel vision, of traveling outside your industry, and of growing your business geometrically by using the success approaches and processes outside your industry and bringing them home to roost. Let me make a couple of points real clear, and this will grab you in a very exciting way. First of all, let's talk about one of the greatest success stories of the 20th century, Federal Express. Before Federal Express came, the only option you had to get a package somewhere overnight was to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars taking it to the airport and giving it to the airlines to put on an airplane in a seat almost and have it hand delivered. Federal Express transformed the whole paradigm of modern-day small package shipping, and they did it not by looking internally at how everybody else in the shipping industry was doing things, but by breaking through and going outside their industry, traveling outside their field, and borrowing the bank clearing process from the Federal Reserve Bank. The Federal Reserve Bank, the only way you can get millions and millions of checks cleared in one day and all processed and debited and credited is by having a hub and spoke system. Totally like what Fred Smith did with Federal Express. He took the very same model that the Federal Reserve Bank used to clear checks in all kinds of banks in all kinds of cities and states and towns and municipalities around the country and get them all cleared and processed overnight. And he borrowed it and transformed it into the shipping system he used of a hub and spoke. That's why everything goes to Memphis. It's the very same thing. So if it wasn't for the ability to borrow success practices from outside his industry, Fred Smith would not be a multi-billionaire. Federal Express would not be here. UPS wouldn't have copied him. Emory wouldn't have copied him. A whole multi-billion-dollar industry wouldn't exist. That's case one. Case two, and it's a funny one. You may not even appreciate it, but you wouldn't have roll-on deodorant today. You wouldn't be able to get up in the morning and put a little squick under your arm and go off to work if it weren't for somebody ingeniously borrowing the ballpoint pen concept from the Parker T-ball jotter. And those of you who are too young to remember the Parker T-ball jotter, it was one of the first rolling pen inks. It replaced basically cartridges. It was the one that basically gave you the ability to continuously and level apply ink so that people could have an inexpensive, disposable writing instrument. That same technology was borrowed, and that's how we got roll-on deodorant. And finally, to our great delight, we would never even have fiber optics and all the extraordinarily breakthroughs they gave to telecommunications today if we would have left their development to the telecommunication industry. Why? Because fiber optics were first discovered and perfected in aerospace, but telecommunications borrowed the technology, converted it and adapted it and adopted and applied it to what they're doing. We have to decide, you and I today, that that's exactly what you're going to do in your business, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what market you address. You're going to start borrowing success processes from outside your field. You're going to funnel them in. You're going to modify them and combine them in hybrids, and you're going to unleash them to the unknowing and unsuspecting and unprepared competitive market, and you're going to own your market very quickly by doing it. Next process of J. Abraham 101. You want to be massively successful. You want to be competitively superior. You want to dominate. You want to run rings around your competition. You want to be the competition. You want to own the market, own the sector. The way to do it is to commit yourself and your business, current, future, or the glint in your eye or the flow in the bosom of your heart, to the fact that you're going to constantly commit to engineer the maximum quantity and quality of breakthroughs continuously in the following four areas: marketing, innovation, management, strategy. Fastest, easiest, most infallible way to favorably change the result of your business is to change your strategy. And yet most people don't do that. They're tactical. Do you understand the difference between tactic and strategy? Yes, no? Tactic is just a means to an end. It's not the big picture. It's not where you're trying to get to. It's not the whole integrated, optimal purpose that you're trying to really operate this business for. Until you have a masterful strategy, and until every activity you engage in that enterprise is a driver integrated to bring about this big, powerful strategic result, you are sub-optimizing. You are losing upside leverage. At best, you're basically losing potential. At worst, you're basically going to die. You got to decide you're going to engineer breakthroughs. If you'll study every great company that not only endures but explodes upwards, they do this. Now, marketing is a very over-intimidating, far more complexly perceived function than it should be. What it really is the process of being able to do two things concurrently: revering and articulating and demonstrating and conveying the tangible, measurable, viable benefit of your product or service at work in somebody's life or business in a way that the recipient, first of all, fully appreciates the enhancement it can be to their life or the protection, and that they desire it so badly that they wouldn't possibly choose, number one, any alternative, and number two, nothing, which is what a lot of people give their market the choice of doing. Innovation can be high-tech, can be very complex and very sophisticated, but all it really is the ability to bring greater advantage, benefit, enhancement, protection to people's lives. If you have a manufacturing process that can save a ton of money in producing a product, but you don't take some of that price advantage and pass it on in one form or another to your market, whether it's in reduced prices or adding more benefits or advantages or options or bonuses or protections or warranties or something that makes the end user the beneficiary, then you're really not being innovative. Innovative is bringing greater advantage, greater benefit, greater something to the puzzle. So you got to be innovative, you got to have breakthroughs. Now I'm going to talk about working on the geometry of your business. The truth of the matter is, it's easier to be geometric than it is linear or arithmetic. It's easier to grow and bypass complete steps. It's easier to go from 1 to 10 than it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The reason, and if anybody knows very much about my background, I'm very proud. I have 10,000 success stories around the world, and we stopped counting at 5 or 6 billion, and I'm very proud of that. And I have really, truly, a number of companies that have gone from 500,000 to 7 million in 9 months, and from 300,000 to 25 million in 2 years. And everyone thinks, God, he must be brilliant. Actually, I'm super logical. I know how little productivity and geometric or exponential power most companies allow or accept in what they do. I know that most people in the world don't purposely get up in the morning and say, hey, I'm going to spend the rest of my life, mortgage my house, dedicate my life and my career to making a fraction of the income I could, to building a business that's going to have a minuscule portion of the impact in the world that it could, to end up with 1/10 of the buyers, the clients that I could, to end up having a net worth and an asset value that's so nominal that it's so much less than it could. The only reason people could possibly purposely accept that kind of a substandard yield in fulfillment and impact and market you serve, in wealth you create and revenue you generate, is that you just don't know how much higher and better performing alternatives you have for the same time or less, for the same activity or less, for the same effort or less, for the same capital or less, for the same distribution channels. I'm trying to be a little bit redundant because I want you to realize that it transcends everything. It doesn't matter. It all works. You just have to understand how to take what I'm about to share with you, what I'm trying to attitudinally impact you with, and translate it over, and basically adapt it, adopt it, and interpret it to the area of business you're applying it to and the stage of that business you're at right now. Now that I've laid a basic foundation, let me start introducing you to J. Abraham 101, to my success and effectiveness and what kind of a philosophy I follow. I've got a few cornerstones that I've built my philosophy upon. They're very simple, but I guarantee no one else you compete against understand it. And once I lay them out, build this foundation and connect you to it, you'll never approach the concept of business. You'll never approach the concept of money making. You'll never approach the concept of building an enduring customer or client base the same way again. So first things we have to appreciate and understand and agree to is that you can't go outside and introduce a lot of new breakthroughs until you first maximize what you're already doing. When I come in and look at a business that I'm going to work with, I say to them, look, whether J. Abraham is in your life or not, right this moment, you've got activities in play. You got money being spent. You got people being employed and deployed. You got promotions going on. You got sales activities, whether it be salespeople in the field or ads running. They're going on right here and now. Before you can ever build new breakthrough activities into your enterprise, you got to start with what you're currently doing, and you got to realize, is it working to maximum? What am I doing? What am I spending money and time on? You got to be able to identify and isolate every revenue generating critical customer building, money making, and business success activity you have consciously or unconsciously put into play that you are committed to, that is going on with or without your conscious activity, whether they're people that are calling for information, whether they're people walking in to buy, whether people dealing with your customer service people. And with every one of those, you've got to decide and agree you're going to maximize, you're going to optimize, you're going to figure out which ones are working best but not being maximized, and you're going to do more of those, which ones are a waste of time, effort, and you're going to stop doing them and you're going to replace them with better and superior performing alternatives, and which ones are actually toxic and unbeknownst to you because you've never monitored them, measured them, analyzed them, and tried to improve or replace them, which ones are actually bringing you down slowly but lethally so you can stop them and replace the effort, the time, the people, or the activities with replacements that can do so much better. So first we're going to maximize what you're already doing and committed to by making the things that are performing well do better, doing more of them. Things that are not performing well, either replace them or improve them. And we're going to try to look at how we can make the people, the money, the expenditure perform at best at all times. You accomplish this, again, by borrowing the success processes other people are doing. For example, let's say that you have a team of salespeople in the field, but they're not performing well. Well, the first thing you got to decide is it the people, is it the process? If it's the people, you want to replace them. And I look at it as if, let's say you had 5 salespeople in the field. I look at those 5 people who have been entrusted by you with 5 parcels of rich farmland to till, to nurture, to harvest, to bring in very bountiful crops. If they're only bringing in a fraction of the crop yield that territory or that market or that industry or that day or that effort could yield, and you're not getting greater yield, you got to replace the people with farmers who really understand or want to do it. That's the first thing. If, on the other hand, the people are good but they don't have the right methods or the right strategy, you've got to decide what better strategies they could be following that would get far greater yield for them. How do you do that? It's by looking at other people in other industry who are much more successfully selling and asking yourself, what processes are they using? What sales approaches are they using? What sales training have they put their people through? And identifying the answers and then modifying those answers over to how it best applies to you at a point of reference. Every success and correspondingly, every failure in business, in every activity, can be boiled down to a driving universal principle at work. There are success principles. There are non-success principles. I guarantee you when you start imposing upon your business this kind of a judgmental criterion, you start saying, okay, what's the driving principle that's making this element of my business perform as it is? You will see, wow, there is a principle at work here. Not necessarily a positive one, but a principle. If you isolate and identify all the highest performing success principles from other industries and you reduce them down to their universal core, their basic element, you can easily apply or adapt or adopt or import and borrow and funnel them over to you. And when you do, it's going to be very exciting. But your first thing is you got to figure out what's working, what's not. And whatever's working, you got to say, am I working it to its fullest? Let's say there's one salesperson who's great, for example, at opening up new accounts, but you have him or her managing existing accounts most of the time. Well, doesn't it make better sense if they're 10 times better than everyone else in your organization to try to get them to open all kinds of new accounts and let other people manage them for you? Because all of a sudden you could be 10 or 20 or 30 times better. Let's say that the approach you're using right now to identify prospects to convert is very ineffective. Let's say you're calling cold on every company trying to find a handful that are viable prospects. Well, if you can find that another company has figured out how to, first of all, identify and rent a list of qualified prospects, pre-call them with a phone organization that gets secured, confirmed appointments, and that every one of their salespeople, they get 25 appointments a day and they're all confirmed instead of your salespeople who are calling cold on 20 people a day that don't have a clue of the least likelihood of even being prospects. You want to replace ineffectual, you want to replace suboptimal approaches or activities you're doing with better ones. And all you have to do is look outside to how all kinds of other industries and all kinds of other companies are doing it and borrow those forwards.
Most people go about optimizing their business the most ludicrous way possible. They start reaching outside for breakthroughs before they first of all stabilize really the foundation of what they're doing. J. Abraham 101 says the first thing you do to grow your business, to solidify it and enhance it and advance it, is to maximize what you're already doing. You cannot maximize what you're already doing until you first really break it down and isolate. This is where Deming comes in. All the revenue processes at work. What I learned from my work with Deming, and I've been able to my great appreciation and delight to translate to revenue generating side, is that any revenue generating activity can be broken down to about 15 or 30 sub-processes that are all integrated into a dynamic system at work. Most people in business, even ones who are sophisticated and MBA trained at Harvard in marketing, don't learn to look at this. Let me give you an example. One of the companies I counsel is a public company. It's one of the big radio aggregators, and they have about 400 radio stations. I'll go into a market with them, and I'll look at 40 different salespeople, and we'll look at the process of enhancing the revenue of their radio stations. Well, I won't just look at, well, gosh, we've got to make you better salespeople. Let me tell you what I learned from Deming about process improvement, because this is going to be a mind blow that's going to drive you to greater wealth, greater success, greater impact and impressing of financial sources, lenders, capital sources, and greater competitive advantage. Okay. Process Improvement 101 says that, first of all, you can identify and isolate every revenue-generating process. Once you do, it can be, first of all, identified, isolated. It can be quantified, measured, and improved. Now, I'll use my example now with that stated. If you start analyzing, remember I said earlier in optimization you had to find all the alternatives, all the options, all the spear ways to do something? You do that by figuring out who's got better performing strategy, tactic, principle, all kinds of elements, and then borrowing them and incorporating to yours. Now back to my story about the radio chain. Okay, I'll go into a market. So I have 40 salespeople in a market. First thing I will look at is not how to just blanket, generic, abstract, globally improve sales. I'll break down every integrated, what I'll call PowerPoint, every leverageable process and sub-process in the whole transaction. For example, one of the things they do, but they never thought about it, is some people, very big part of their business, go out and they target large non-agency represented accounts that they can sell. They also target large agency represented accounts. They also target small agency represented. They also target small non-agency represented. They also target various industries. They also target people for special events. That's one cluster. Another sales process that's critical. Some people are very, very good at opening new accounts. Other people are very, very good at maintaining and reselling new accounts. Other people are very, very good at selling against very steep competition. In the media, it's ratings, or it's radio against TV, or it's CPM. Some people are very, very good at selling when they have really bad ratings. Some people are very, very good at getting referrals. Very, very, very rarely are all of them good at everything. Even rare does anybody in management ever look at all these processes. I want to know, first of all, who excels at each one. Normally it's like the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. When you got 40 salespeople, you can only find 3 or 4 in each category that are dramatically, profoundly, geometrically superior. For example, in opening accounts, you'll normally find the top 2 or 3. They're not just 5 or 10% better. They may be 500 or 1,000% better. Well, first thing you want to do, if you find ones that are 10 times better than the worst or the least performing, you want to figure out what in the world they do, know, apply, consciously or unconsciously, that makes them that successful, so you can teach it and translate it to these people so that you can bring these people up. If you find the 5 top performers in a category, internally, this is considering you have a sales force. I'm just using an application. I'll take it external in a minute. You want to teach the top performers what the other top performers know, because it's always going to be different. It's going to make the top performers even greater in their performance, and normally the 80-20 rule applies there too. If you got 4 people that are doing 80% of the volume, if you teach them how to be 20% better, you're going to probably get more yield than if you teach the other 80 how to be 50 or 100% better. But you got to look at those connections. Next thing I'm going to do is look at who's so good, because I'm going to ask a question. Why is it written that a salesman or woman has to be a master at all trades? Most people have territory representation. Will have the poor, lowly salesman or woman or rep have to open accounts, go to all kinds of special types of accounts, sell all kinds of special different products, when in fact, if you find through this process analysis, maybe one person is 10 times better at opening new accounts, but he or she sucks at maintaining them because it bores them. Maybe somebody else is incredibly great at selling certain kinds of products or certain kinds of markets, but it's terrible at selling all markets. Well, why let everybody operate mediocre? Why not consider maybe having the person that's greatest at opening accounts go out and open accounts and flip them to the people that are good at managing them, people that are best at selling specific products or markets, doing that and flipping them to people to manage them, and just using Logic 101, because that's one small infinitesimal way that you end up starting to work on the geometry of the business. You start not engineering incremental gains, but exponential. You go from everyone being the same 10% good to being 500% better. But not 500% better in one category, but maybe in the 30 categories you identify that I guarantee that most other people in the field of endeavor that you are pursuing haven't even thought to look at. And even the ones that have thought to look at it don't have a clue what they're looking for. It's exciting, isn't it? Okay, first thing you got to do is maximize what you're doing. Now take the same philosophy, but take it external. So now you got a business, or you're going to start a business. You want to figure out how many other businesses, first of all, in your field have figured a better way of doing something, and what it is, and how you can export it, import it into yours, basically how you can apply it, adapt it, adopt it. Then when you're done with that very, 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 very minuscule opportunity, then you want to transcend that and look at the world. Look at the world globally, look at the world industry-wise. Say, okay, there's 1,000 different industries. How many different ways did they go about targeting markets? How many different ways did they go about making presentations? Oh, by the way, back when you're breaking up these sub-processes, you can go very deep, and actually there's enormous leverage and geometrical impact in it. For example, when I was interviewing one of the groups at this radio group, I found out that, first of all, the way different people targeted was pretty profound. One had a very scientific approach, one had a very haphazard one. Well, the scientific approach, upon my analysis, and I'm very analytical and very measurable and quantifiable, was about 20 times more viable, more productive, more profitable than the haphazard one. Another one, when I started looking at them, I figured out they had a great strength in securing interviews. Once they targeted the audience, they know how to get on the phone and get interviews that got 10 appointments. 10 times better than the worst one. Well, first I want to know what they did different, how, whether it was conscious or not, and I do that through a Socratic interview. Then I want to know what in the world I could take from that to apply it to everybody. Then I want to know why everyone else shouldn't be learning from them. Then I found that somebody else was about 25 times better, literally, at preparing a written confirmation that followed a verbal presentation. Normally in the radio business, and I'm just taking an industry, you make a presentation, somebody thinks about it, they don't give you the close, you got to follow it up with a presentation. Or you get an appointment, then you send them out something, then you go back and you make a formal presentation. But what that letter, what that proposal says has everything to do with it. Piece of minutia that'll give you guys about a 25 to a 300% improvement in your sales. Whatever business you're in, if you use catalogs or brochures, or are planning on using catalogs or brochures, raise your hand. Anytime you send a catalog or brochure out without a cover letter that is their advocate, its champion, you're losing about 50 to 80% of the impact. Did you know that? People say, send me a catalog or a brochure, and somebody will stick it in the envelope and send it out. The sales letter is the advocate. It makes the case. It enlivens. It animates. It transactionally shows the product or service at work in their life. It makes the case. The brochure is the amplification. If you don't understand that, you're going to lose torque. Those of you who haven't gotten started, it's going to be great. You haven't made the mistake. Those of you who are doing it wrong now, stop, because it'll add geometrically. If right now you send a brochure out, and you probably don't measure when you send 100 out how many convert, you probably don't have a system of following up, so you don't know what to do. But if you send it out, you're going to probably find it with adding the right letter to it, or any letter to it that's an advocate of the product or service at work, is going to increase your results. As I said, 30 to 300, 500%. It's really that powerful. So again, I was talking about maximizing what you're doing first. You can't maximize what you're doing until you know what they're doing. All the activities, all the opportunities, all the people, what each one's doing. Then you got to overlay it, see who's doing it better in your industry. Then you got to go outside your industry, hopefully to lots of industries, and look at how they're doing it. And it doesn't necessarily mean literally the linear, generic process. It means the result the process is trying to get. In other words, you might see lead generating, because that's how you know it, as running silly little ads that don't say anything and getting people to clip them out and call, or doing bingo sheets. And those are lead generating, but I was in a business one time years ago that we generated like 10 million leads every year, and we figured out that there's a couple key factors to lead generating. Quantity, quality, convertibility, residual value, acquisition cost. Until you know all 5 of those things, you don't have a clue what a good or bad lead is. But you might find that 18 other industries have figured out 10 times better ways to get leads. And one of the best ways is, instead of doing it in the outside market, they might just go to a quality organization or company that already has the market, get them to endorse you, or get them to let you ride with their salespeople, get them to let you have a kiosk in their operation. I mean, the smartest lead generating I ever saw back in the old days was Allstate and Sears. But I mean, there's a lot of alternatives that you never think of. I'm very nonlinear. I want to see all the different options, and then I want to choose the highest performing one first to replace the underperforming one. But I might not want to replace it. I might want to keep it there if my underperforming one is still viable, because why throw the baby out with the bathwater? If this one is driving $2 million, but I can put next to it or with it or replace it or fortify it with one or two better ones that do the same thing, but will pull 3 or 4 times better, the combination is very powerful, and it's geometric, geometric, geometric. So the first thing you want to do is literally maximize what you're doing. Can't do that to figure out what the hell you're doing. Can't figure that out till you break it down to its process and sub-process. All this is driven by the same thing: borrowing the success processes from outside the industry or from outside your business, traveling outside your market. Think about it. How many here have ever traveled outside your city? Okay. How many have traveled outside your state, your country, this continent? Every time you went further, didn't you learn more? Didn't you see distinctions you never knew about? Different attitudes, moralities, topographies, lifestyles, religious, beliefs, all kinds of things that broaden your understanding of what was possible. Broaden your paradigm. The same analogy applies to what you're doing in your current, your pre-revenue, your business plan-based, or your glint-in-the-eye business.
We'll continue with more powerful mastermind marketing strategies in the next session.